Hello everyone and welcome to the Wizard class version. Before we get in, just like to say that the Wizard has always been known as the class, as the full caster that has access to the most spells. However, unfortunately, I feel like it's also known as the class that has the least amount of features, which is unfortunate. I think that though, yes, having access to a lot of spells is very good, and I think that, depending on the spells you choose, those can all kind of be in some sort of way features in of themselves. However, I still don't think that necessarily means that Wizard of the Coast should get away with, oh, I don't know, having a class only have 1, 2, 3 core class features. I don't think that makes any sense. Yeah, we're here to make sure that the Wizard gets some love too. I think that, the Wizard has a really cool identity in the fact that they are this kind of vast wielding and comprehending individual of the arcane, that they have access to all these different spells through their spell book, and that they kind of had this intellectual way of going about comprehending magic and casting and everything, which is super cool. But I just don't think it comes out really in its features in the core class progression. And so Wizards of the Coast in their Unearthed Arcana definitely have added a couple cool things, and I kind of took some of those ideas and ran with them, and also continued to add in things of my own as well. And so without further ado, let's get into it and see where the Wizard stands now. Alright, so here we go. Above me is going to be the Unearthed Arcana, which I'll be referencing, which is where I got some of my inspiration. And then over here is going to be my version of the Wizard. And then, of course, as you already know, I have my 2014 Player's Handbook here to basically not reference because they have nothing in it. And so let's go ahead and jump in here. We have the table here. And then we have our hit points, which is going to be a d6, of course, unchanged. Proficiency is going to be saving throws, intelligence, and wisdom. The skills, instead of 2, you get to choose 3 from Arcana, History, Insight, Investigation, Medicine, Nature, Perception, or Religion. There you go, a little one ski up there. And then one choice of Artisan's Tools I added in as well, because I think it only makes sense that a wizard in all of their studies would definitely have, dabbled in some sort of tools and have some sort of knowledge on those. And so I think that makes sense. Armor's gonna be none. Weapons are gonna be simple. Equipment is gonna be either spend 55 gold pieces on whatever you want, or you can take the predetermined items, which is similar to the Unearthed Arcana as they have listed there. All right, let's go and jump into this and see what has been improved. So level 1 is going to be Arcane Recovery, which is going to be kind of an iconic feature for the Wizard. You've learned to regain some of your magical energy by studying your spell book. When you finish a short rest, you can choose expended spell slots to recover. The spell slots can have a combined level that is equal to 2 or less than half your wizard level, rounded up, and none of the spots can be level 6 or higher. For example, if you're a level 4 wizard, you can recover up to 2 levels worth of spell slots, regaining either a level 2 spell slot or 2 level 1 spell slots. Once you use this feature, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest. Very good ability, being able to recover those spell slots on even a short rest. So love that. Spellcasting, I'm not going to read because that's a long wall of text. However, I will say that the wizard does have a unique item, the spell book, which I'll go ahead and just kind of get into a little bit here. Your wizardly apprenticeship culminated in the creation of a unique book in your possession, your spell book. It is a tiny object that weighs 3 pounds and it contains 100 pages, which can only be read by you or someone casting the Identify spell. I like the fact that it's kind of locked. It's pretty cool. You determine the book's appearance and materials, such as gilt-edged tomb or a collection of vellum bound together by twine. The book contains the spells you know of level 1 and higher. It starts with 6 level 1 spells of your choice from the wizard spell list. Instead of choosing spells, you can have your book contain the following spells. Whenever you gain a wizard level after 1, add 2 wizard spells of your choice to your spell book. Each of these spells must be of level for which you have spell slots. As shown on the wizard's table, the spells are the culmination of arcane research you do regularly. Okay, so the big reason why I read that was just because they did kind of simplify spellcasting in that in the table they just explain to you your spells prepared. You have these are your spells prepared, and essentially the spells prepared is your spell list. And so for every other caster, essentially spells prepared is basically that's your spell list. There's no longer like there was in 2014 where all the classes were like, hey, you can prepare this many spells, or no, you can have this many spells known to you, like spells known and then spells prepared. That there was like this distinction between what you know and then what they're prepared, and you can swip them and swap them and do all this stuff. They basically streamlined that in this newer version where they're like, hey, spells prepared. These are the amount you have. That's your basically what it comes down to. But Wizard with their spell book is still in a way kind of using the spells known feature in the sense of that you have 4 spells prepared as shown in the table. However, starting off, your Wizard spell book has 6 first level spells. And then as you level, you can add 2 wizard spells. So essentially, your spell book is going to have a longer, larger list than what you can have prepared. And so you're still going to kind of dabble with the whole known spells, prepared spells, and how, you know, they come together and what you select for the day. So just wanted to make that distinction there. And then, of course, I made sure to get all of the different rules on my PDF as well in terms of expanding and replacing your spell book because that's important. And so, yeah, moving on from spell casting. Level 2 is going to be Scholar, which is going to be a new feature that the UA has introduced, which if I find it, I'll get to it. Simple, but I like it. While studying magic, you also specialize in an academic field of study. Choose one of the following skills: Arcana, History, Medicine, Nature, or Religion. You now have proficiency in the chosen skill. If you already have proficiency, you now have expertise in that skill. I like that. I like the idea that the wizard, being an intelligence-based character or class, I like that they're kind of leaning into that a little bit more and giving you options to be able to be better in the fields of academic study. Now, in the UA, they did not add medicine, and I feel like medicine is definitely an academic field of study, though it does utilize wisdom. I think it just makes sense that the wizard would also be able to kind of tap into that. So I think that's pretty cool. That's the only kind of adjustment I made there. But I like that not only are they getting that I've increased the nail, they get 3. Not only do they get 3 proficiencies at start, but they also are getting more throughout the class or getting expertise. Because expertise is super good, and I think if any class deserves expertise in these intelligence-based skills, I think that it should be the wizard, and I like that it's coming out. So level 2 is going to be the wizard subclass. You gain your wizard subclass at level 2. Wizard of the Coast, for some reason, we're like, we're going to make all the classes get level 3. At level 3, they're going to get their subclass, which is stupid. So I have reverted it back to level 2. So Spell 3 is going to be a new feature. It's going to be called Spell Deflection. Your understanding of spells and the magic it takes to cast them allows you to react quickly when attacked by them in an effort to negate their damaging effects. When hit with a spell attack or spell effect that you can see, you can use your reaction to expend charges of this feature to reduce the damage of that spell equal to 1d10 plus your intelligence modifier per number of charges expended. For example, if you used 3 charges, you would subtract 3d10 plus your intelligence mod from the total damage of the spell or effect that hit you. This feature has a number of charges equal to your intelligence modifier, and you regain all expended charges when you finish a long rest. I really like this feature. I like my ideas behind it were the fact that pretty much every single class, in one way or another, has an additional resource pool that they can tap into. And the wizard was left out in that. And so I think that giving them the ability to have a resource that they can use, which is spell deflection, I think it's really cool because now it gives them, you know, it kind of puts them in line with all the other classes. And additionally, I like that it shows the wizard's ability to understand spells and how that understanding and learning of the arcane has now allowed them to almost redirect energy, or however you want to flavor it, however the DM wants to flavor it, you can kind of bring that out in combat and in various encounters. I think that's just really cool, and I think it kind of shows that that identity of the class of being this like researched arcane practitioner. So moving on, level 4 is going to be the ability score improvement. Level 5 is going to be Memorize Spell, which is going to be an additional UA feature, which I think is pretty cool. Studying your spellbook for 1 minute, you can expend mental and magical effort to memorize a spell. Choose one spell level 1 or higher from your spellbook that you don't have prepared. You now have that spell prepared until you use this feature to prepare a different spell. It might seem kind of subtle, and maybe it doesn't to you, but I think this feature is incredibly good, because of the fact that it gives the wizard a lot more versatility in their tool set. I think that the wizard being able to have the most spells, more spells than any other class, is super cool. But that's only as cool as you being able to access them. And unfortunately, obviously on a long rest, you can swap your known to your prepared, and you can kind of do that. But say you set up your spells for the day, and then an encounter comes up that you were not prepared for. Now it's like, oh, well, now I'm stuck with these tools that I've chosen for the day. And so that feels bad. It feels bad to have access to all these spells, but then in certain situations not be able to utilize them. And so I think Memorize Spell lifts up the wizard in an awesome way to be able to have flexibility in their tool set. And I think it's super cool. I think it bridges the gap, and it alleviates a lot of frustration that the wizard has in terms of running into instances where they have a spell for a situation, but it wasn't prepared. I think this is a cool way to bridge that gap. Love this. I actually really, really do like this feature. Level 6 is going to be the subclass feature. Hooray! Level 7 is going to be Versed Researcher, which is going to be an additional homebrewed feature here that I've made. Having spent much time in the pursuit of research, knowledge, and comprehension of the arcane, you have become well versed in locating information that you desire. Before you make an investigation check, you can choose to give yourself advantage on the roll. You can use this feature twice per long rest. Additionally, you gain a bonus to your perception checks equal to your intelligence modifier. Minimum of +1. I like this a lot because I feel like what this does is it brings that threshold and that success rate of the wizard in terms of like needing to locate things or find research or maybe gather information. It allows that success rate to go up and to be more in the actual character's hands in terms of being able to give yourself advantage on, say, a very important investigation roll that might lead to additional information that they can they can learn and then give to the party, and they could utilize going forward or whatever the situation may be. I think it's cool, and I also like the fact that perception, because I mean, in my mind, being researching and pursuing knowledge and a lot of that stuff, and even just like taking in various spaces and everything of in the kind of studious academic field, in my mind, not only is investigation, but it's also perception. It's not only being able to physically interact and deal with the world, but it's also perceiving and taking information. And so that being the case, with the fact that the perception is a wisdom-based skill, I think that's where the wizard can be kind of can obviously lack in, because they're trying to bump that intelligence stat up so much. And so I think giving them a bump to perception just with their intelligence, I think kind of brings that in line a little bit more with them being not only really good investigators, but also perceivers, which in my mind kind of both are one and the same. And so I like that they're being increased with this feature. It's bringing that success rate and that threshold up for them, so that that way they can be more successful more often. Because, it kind of sucks when you're like, dude, my guy's the brainiac wizard and I will figure out what's going on here. And then you roll like, you roll relatively low, and then you don't have anything to kind of help lift you up in those situations. Not to say that failure shouldn't be a thing in D&D, or you shouldn't be a thing in a class or a skill set that you excel in, but it should be less likely, in my opinion. And so that's kind of the background for that. Moving on. Level 8, ability score improvement. Hooray. Level 9 is going to be Adept Scholar, which is a homebrewed feature, but I essentially just took the same verbiage here from Scholar that they had introduced and just made it at level 9. Through your continued research and study, you have gained even more understanding in the various fields of academic study and the world around you. Choose one of the following skills: Arcana, History, Medicine, Nature, or Religion. You now have proficiency in the chosen skill. If you already have proficiency, you now have expertise in that skill. Mentioned before with Scholar, just bringing up that knowledge base for the wizard, in terms of these academic fields, is just a cool thing, and I think it just makes sense. So, all right, moving on. Level 10 is going to be subclass feature. Level 11 is going to be another homebrewed, which is going to be a spell trap, and I actually really like this. I think this really gives that rooted identity in what the wizard's supposed to be, and of that kind of just quickly developing masterclass of the arcane. So, level 11 is going to be Spell Trap. Your comprehension of magic has grown tremendously, so much so that you can attempt to capture failed magical energy and restore it back to the point of potency. If a spell attack misses you, or you resist the effect of a spell that only targeted you, you can expend a charge from the same pool of charges that your spell deflection feature utilizes, and use your reaction to make an insight check to ascertain the nature of the spell and the energy that was expended to cast it. The DC is 14 if you know the spell and have it in your spellbook, or 17 if you do not. If you succeed on your check, then as part of the same reaction, you can attempt to trap the quickly dispersing magical energy. Roll a d20 and add your intelligence modifier to the outcome. The DC for trapping a spell is equal to 14 plus the spell's level. If you succeed on your check, at the start of your next turn, you can use your action to unleash the harnessed energy, casting an exact copy of the spell that you managed to trap. Casting a spell in this way does not count as you having cast a leveled spell on your turn. If you trap a spell and decide not to cast it, you can release the energy, no action required. Once you use this feature successfully, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest. Alright, so a lot here. We're going to kind of break it apart. First of all, I think this is a really cool way to show that the wizard has truly gained just a wider range and understanding of magic. The fact that they can take, magic that didn't necessarily hit its mark and kind of almost recycle it and, and kind of bring it back up, maybe channeling some of their own understanding to bring it back to potency. I think it's just a super cool way, a flavorful and art role-playing way to show that the amount of understanding that the wizard has. Now, I did kind of make multiple gates for this feature because it could be in a very, very good feature. And so obviously you need to make that insight check to ascertain what spell was cast. And just because I don't think that the wizards should have just unlimited access to know what every single spell, ever, in existence. And so I think that making it easier for if it's within your spell book totally makes sense. Because then you can kind of pick up on various components that we use to cast the spell and kind of correlate it to your own understanding. I think that's cool. And then 17 if you do not, because I think that this is also kind of tying into the fact that, with the basis of understanding that the wizard, is gained and has in the arcane, they can utilize that to still kind of ascertain what the spell was meant to be or supposed to be and quickly kind of discern that. And so I think that's pretty cool. Not to say that they necessarily know what the spell was inherently, but that they kind of understood what the components of it were to bring it back up to that ability of potency. And then obviously if they do understand what the spell was supposed to be or the desired effect was supposed to be, they can then roll another check here to see if they can then bring it back up to. So they basically have to ascertain what it was. And then once they do that, they can then make another check to see if they can bring the magic back to what it was supposed to be, channeling that. And so, channeling their knowledge and their understanding of the arcane. So, and then if they do, they essentially get to cast that spell for free. And I think that's just super cool. And just to specify, though, it says casting a spell in this way does not count as having cast a leveled spell on your turn. I think that just makes sense because, you didn't necessarily expend the energy to, manifest this ability. You're just kind of trapping and harnessing it, though it does take your action. And so you will not be able to obviously cast 2 leveled spells, 2 action-based level spells. And so, but you can cast a bonus action. So say you do this, but then you also want to cast Misty Step. You can do that. I think a lot of bonus action-based spells are usually more utility anyway. And so I think that being able to utilize, being able to cast the spell and it then being able to still do a utility thing or utility spell on your turn makes sense. I don't think it'll be too broken. Obviously, if you have other opinions or you play test it and you have feedback, please let me know. But I think this is just a really, really cool, flavorful feature for the wizard to kind of draw out that identity of what the class is supposed to be. And it also does pull from the same resource as your spell deflection. And so this isn't something that you're necessarily going to want to be spamming. Because whether you succeed or not, it does burn one of those charges. And so this is kind of one of those things. I can kind of foresee Spell Trap being utilized more when a lot of your own spells are kind of run out. And you're kind of now, in a desperate situation to maybe potentially, harness some magic where you can get it, essentially. And then last thing, it is limited to a spell attack that, missed you or a single target effect. So if an enemy casts Fireball, you're not just able to recast Fireball because it's an area of effect and there's a lot more going on. But if they're trying to cast Hold Person on you and they failed, then you can, basically say Uno reverse card, no you, and then cast it back on them. So, all right. Moving on, ability score improvement at 12th level. Spell 13 is going to be the spell deflection improvement. So going back to your 3rd level feature, this is now an improvement of it. You've learned to wield the reactive magical energy you release to deflect incoming damage, expanding its effective area. The damage you reduce for yourself is also reduced for another creature of your choice that is within 10 feet of you. So not only can you reduce the damage of an effect or a spell for you, you can also do it for another person, which super cool. Just kind of going down that vein of you're just continuing to learn how to wield magic in various ways, and I think it's just super cool. So Moving on, level 14 is going to be a subclass feature. Level 15 is going to be the spell trap improvement from your level 11 spell trap feature. You've mastered your understanding of the components that are utilized to cast the spells that you know and that are within your spell book, allowing for a faster and more proficient read of spells that you attempt to trap. An insight check is no longer required to attempt to trap a spell that you know and is written within your spell book, and the insight check DC for an unknown spell is reduced to 15. So just some pretty good buffs there, but nothing too insane. I didn't want to drop the DC for actually being able to channel the spell or to be able to actually trap it. I think that this for the payoff that this feature can have, I think that I wanted to keep it still pretty difficult to achieve, right? Because if it's just a cantrip, then I mean the DC is 14, which isn't that bad. And then if it's a 9th level spell, the DC goes up to 23. Now, keep in mind that, I mean, you could very well still trap a 9th level spell as long as you roll, if your intelligence is 5 and you have a +5 to it, you can still realistically roll an 18 and still trap a 9th level spell. So the threshold's pretty small there, but there is the hope for you to be able to do that. And so, but I wanted to make it pretty difficult. So I think minimizing the first gate that you have to get through of knowing what the spell is good, but keeping that difficulty class up pretty high for the actual trapping is important. So level 16 ability score improvement. Level 17 is be no class feature. I've mentioned this in other caster videos, but there is a gap in the in either half casters or full casters lineup here, because that way to give marshals a little bit of an edge in terms of core class features that they're gaining because of the access and the utility of spells that these casters are getting. But you still get something. For instance, the wizard is getting access to their 9th level spell, they're getting access to another spell, and they're getting their proficiency bonus bumped up. So you're still gaining things as a caster regardless of whether you're getting the feature or not. So level 18, Spell Mastery. You've achieved such mastery over certain spells that you can cast them at will. Choose a 1st level and a 2nd level spell that are in your spell book and that have a casting time of an action. You always have those spells prepared, and you can cast them at their lowest level without expending a spell slot. If you want to cast either spell at a higher level, you must expend a spell slot as normal. Whenever you finish a long rest, you can study your spell book and exchange one of those spells for another eligible spell of the same level from that book. So good. I really like this feature. Just showing that mastery that the wizard now is having over just even leveled spells. Like cantrips, obviously level 0 you can cast this all the time, but now that is ominously bridging out now to a 1st and a 2nd level. You basically have a 1st level, 2nd level spell cantrip, which is super good, and that's unchanged. That is unchanged, except for the fact that you had to spend 8 hours to exchange one of the spells or both, and now it's just whenever you finish a long rest, you can study your spell book to essentially do the same thing. So the verbiage is different, but ultimately it has the same effect. And so level 20 is or level 19, sorry, ability score improvement, and then level 20 is the epitome of magic. Level 20 for the Unearthed Arcana, and then this was also the in the 2014 version was essentially you can choose 2 3rd level spells. Choose 2 3rd level spells, and then you can cast them once without expending a spell slot. So it's all right. I mean, it's nothing. I mean, spell mastery is definitely much better, but I do also understand that they're not going to just give you 3rd level spells that you can just, cast unlimited amount of times. And so I did keep that, but I added on to it. I think that the capstones of these classes are really important. I think that is to make the peak of a class something that is just insanely good, draws players in and makes them want to hardline a class. And I do think there's a little bit of an, and I wouldn't say an issue, but I do think there's a big kind of misconception that if you need a multi-class to make to be able to make a very viable character. And honestly, with the 2014 version and even with some of the finalized changes in the 2024 version, I think that there's still just like a lot of gaps in classes that make people feel like they need to multi-class. But I feel like with all the revisions that I've made to all these different classes, I do believe that I've lifted each one up to the point where if you mainline a class, you're not necessarily missing out in terms of like the power threshold that you can achieve. I think that your tool set might not be as versatile as multi-classing, but it is still strong. And I think there's still a point to be made of just choosing a class and sticking with it. And making a 20th level feature incredibly good is one way to help, players want to stick with a class, because, hey, the second you multi-class, boom, that 20th level feature for both classes are now gone. So let's jump into it. Level 20, epitome of magic. Through countless years of study, research, and wielding the arcane through its many magics, you became become the epitome of a mage. You get the following benefits. Brilliant Mind. Your intelligence score increases by 2, and its new maximum is 22. Master Scholar. Your knowledge base across all the various fields of academic study far surpasses that of even the most studious of individuals. Whenever you make an Arcana, History, Medicine, Nature, or Religion check, you can treat a roll of a 7 or lower as an 8. Signature spells, I already kind of explained it. You gain mastery over 2 powerful spells and can cast them with little effort. Choose 2 third-level spells in your spellbook as your signature spells. You always have these spells prepared, and you can cast each of them once at 3rd level without expending a spell slot. When you do so, you can't do so again until you finish a short or long rest. If you want to cast either spell at a higher level, you must expend a spell slot as normal. It's legendary spell resistance. If you fail a saving throw against a spell or spell effect, you can choose to succeed instead. Once you use this feature, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest. Let's go through it real quick. Brilliant Mind, obviously bumping that threshold, making it so that you actually are exceeding the most, you are exceeding that baseline, or I should say you're exceeding that cap that anyone else could even achieve with being level 20, right? You're breaking that barrier down. You're going far, past any other individual. Master Scholar, I really like this. It brings that success threshold up in terms of just, things related to intelligence in the academic fields. I think that's cool. I did have it to where it was, you can treat it as a 10, but I wanted to drop it a little bit. I think that with the amount of various features you get with Adept Scholar and, with and Scholar and the various features you can get to give you expertise and proficiencies, I didn't want it to necessarily be an automatic always, 18, 20, whatever it is. I wanted it to be that, say you roll pretty low, you still have that 8, and depending on the skill, it's bumped up to at least like a 13, 14, something that makes it so that you can still gather something from this check. And so that's pretty good there. Signature spells, I will say kind of another thing on that is the fact that you can always have those spells prepared is pretty good. That tacks into that. And also you regain them on a short rest and a long rest. So that's actually really good too. And then legendary spell resistance, this I threw in there just to really kind of emphasize the fact that you are now, the epitome, the pinnacle, the capstone of a wizard, and the fact that you can just, knowing magic to the degree that you do, you can just overcome by pure fundamentals and just understanding of it, that you could just overcome a spell or a spell effect just, by pure understanding of the arcane. So, yeah, this class gets legendary resistance. So take that, legendary monsters. Now we have a class that gets it too. But yeah, that is going to be the wizard in its entirety. I really like wizard. I think wizard, obviously ranger, of course I mentioned before. I really like where that's at now, which, by the way, if you haven't watched some of these other classes, hey, feel more than free. If this is the first video you tuned into, then hey, check out some of those other ones, because they've all been uplifted to a really good spot. But wizard is one of the ones that I really like now. I think that the features that it now has really give it that intellectual, scholarly, arcane practitioner, and I just really liked I just like the flavor of it now. So a lot more than before, because I think the wizard was kind of understood across the board as to what it was, but the features didn't reflect. But now the features reflect. So I think it's pretty dope. But yeah, that is going to be it for the wizard. If you want the access to this PDF, it'll be in the description of the video. If you are curious as to how I made it using the Homebrew website. It's a super cool website where you can make PDFs that look in that are in the same style of the D&D handbooks and various handbooks, I guess is the word for it. Yeah. So anyway, and then last but not least, of course, if you have any feedback for me in this version of the class, constructive in nature, and you perhaps even play test it, and you want to give me the results of what it how it played, feel more than free to do that in the comments. I would love to hear it. But that is about it. And I mean, this is the last video that I'm recording, but if this is the first video you found, hey, there is 11 other classes for you to check out, or however many, more, or however many you want to look at. But yeah, definitely check the rest of them out. Happy with the wizard, happy with this whole series, and I will see you in the, well, I guess I'll see you in whatever video you go to next, or in the final video of the series, which I'll be doing after this. So Anyway, see ya!